Hello, we made it. This is it. This is the end. Um, I can't believe this is the last lecture video. So instead of lecturing as normal today in my sort of 10 to 20 minute lecture style, I want instead to sort of complement the Mazower epilogue with a few suggested readings about racism and the rise of a new right in Europe. This is obviously something that Americans are also grappling with today, with white supremacists and neo-Nazis feeling comfortable enough to, in our current climate, to march openly in the streets, to attack our Capitol building in January. In addition to being, school shooters and murderers of people whom they see as less than. Europe, too, is facing a lot of these challenges as well, particularly since the housing bubble crash of 2007, which hit Europe, really hard, and the dip of the strength of the euro, which is the European Union's currency. Economically weaker states like Greece and Italy and Croatia, they've all seen a massive resurgence in their proto-fascists, very much like what those very same states saw during the Great Depression in the 1930s. But they are not, or certainly not, the only country susceptible to racism and discrimination. I'm going to post for you all a very short Guardian podcast episode about experiences of racism in Great Britain. That was Bias in Britain, The Truth About Racism. And two short news articles about racism in politics, which are centered around white nationalist, conservative, right-wing politics. While radical right-wing racists don't represent the majority of any of these states, the trouble with democracies is that when times are tough, like in economic crises or political instability, the rhetoric of those nationalist, right-wing, fascist parties, that rhetoric can be really persuasive, right? They talk about blaming an internal enemy, like there's some group inside of the state that is responsible for economic crisis or political instability. They promise to return a nation to its former glory, to greatness, and that kind of rhetoric that can draw people in when they're afraid or they're suffering. It can convince people even to vote those sort of outliers into office in a democracy. And as we saw in the 1930s Germany and Italy, once they're in power, they can start passing laws that give themselves more power. We don't want to see the resurgence of Nazi race rhetoric in our policies, right? We don't want to see the Nuremberg laws make a return, or the Serbian nationalist violence come back and start to commit genocide, right? We don't want to see that happen again. That's why I hope we all study history, to understand the goals and the falsenesses of Nazi rhetoric, to see through those empty promises toward the heart of what they really mean, to grapple with and be affected by violence and the trauma of genocide and rape and civil war, right? These are not things that we should be desensitized to. We should be afraid of these things. We should be working actively to prevent these things. So read through these two articles and listen to the podcast. And for 10 extra credit points, we'll go out with a bang. You can write a 1-paragraph response to the 3 pieces and post it as a new journal entry in the video lecture extra credit section of Blackboard. Feel free to also bring these up in this week's Flipgrid posts as well, your final Flipgrid posts of the course. It's been a whirlwind of a class. I hoped to give you at least some deeper dives into subjects, as well as a broader understanding of the overarching forces at work in 20th century Europe, so that you can better understand what's going on there today. In addition, of course, to appreciating the films that Europeans have made to tell their own stories. And so I'm going to use this as my sign-off. This is it, folks, my last appearance. I hope that you have learned something. I hope you've enjoyed the films that I selected for you. and I hope you had some fun along the way. Thanks for joining me.